What up, guys? Before I tell you about muscles and other stuff like that, if you haven't already, please give me a little thumbs up. I promise you the video is going to be good. Hit that subscribe button. Tell a reasonable number of friends. What I have for you today, though, is a video straight out of the exercise library from my app. So if you don't know, I have an app. One of the big things on it is it has programs, multiple programs to choose from, depending on the time that you're watching this. It has a dozen plus programs, so full programs. And one of the big key features about that is every single exercise that is within any program on my app is within the exercise library as well too. So every single exercise, if you like this kind of stuff, I go into great detail. Again, that's kind of what my app is about. People that want a little bit more than just pull here, squeeze here, 30 seconds worth of tips. People that want a little bit more of an in-depth view of, well, why am I doing these exercises? What are the goals of these exercises? What are cues that I have found helpful with hundreds and thousands of clients? So again, it's a little bit more in depth like you're about to see. So anyway, if you find this stuff helpful, as always, leave me some comments, leave me some feedback here. And if you really like this kind of stuff, make sure you check out my app. Again, because there's an exercise library full of dozens and dozens and dozens of exercises just like this. And I'm always adding to the library. So with every new program that gets added onto my app, there are always new exercises that get added into the library as well too. And of course, I take member requests. So if a member has an exercise they want me to do and I haven't done it, I'll put it in there as well too. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. And again, I look forward to your feedback. All right, guys, gonna go over some form and setup tips here for ab mat crunches. This is my single favorite ab exercise because in my opinion, it checks all the boxes. It's very simple, very easy. The nice part, there is actually a big component to training economy when you're actually figuring out exercises. You know, where if I show something and say, hey, this is the best leg exercise, but it's basically a piece of equipment that costs $8,000 and your gym doesn't have it, then it's gonna exclude some people. Whereas this is an ab mat. So I always say, I don't make these. I don't have any affiliation with any brand. You don't have to look up Synergy with 2 E's. Synergy. I just got this one off of Amazon. So if you just type in ab mat off of Amazon, you will find one of these. And again, while there might be some subtle differences, if I could really nerd, density might make a little bit of a difference at times. The amount of rounding here would actually be different. Some people have a little bit more or less spinal extension, flexion, range of motion there. But for most people, considering these are like 15 to 20 bucks, it is a very solid investment. And you don't have to overthink it. You want something relatively firm. I'll have people sometimes say, well, what about stability balls? What about BOSU balls? In reality, not bad. But if there's any, we're going to get technical here, don't want to lose it. If there's any squishiness to the material, then it actually can translate to a loss of output. Basically, if you go to move a joint because a muscle is contracting and something else moves, that can be a little bit of a loss of transfer of force, basically. So again, if I have kind of a squishy back thing and you're going into a crunch, it's again just not arguably as efficient or not as good to load. So the nice part about these, honestly, first off, normal crunches are a relatively good exercise. The only problem with a normal crunch is you're going from essentially a flat spine, so you could call it neutral ischial, so this way, flat spine, into a little bit of spinal flexion. And while again, done properly, that is isolated rectus abdominis, the main thing that's working, you're missing a whole lot of range of motion. It doesn't allow you to go into extension. So for most people, full range of motion, spinal flexion extension is gonna be some degree of extension. So let's show it from the side. So just so you can imagine, obviously, hopefully just some real basic anatomy stuff. You've got your spine basically that sits on top of your pelvis and then starts at some point in time to attach to some ribs. So if we're really looking at training rectus abdominis, all that really manipulates, because where those rectus abdominis attach, the six-pack muscles, is basically the top of your pelvis and the bottom of your ribs. So again, just really basic muscle stuff is obviously they can control those 2 points. When they contract, they pull those points together. And when you go into an eccentric on the lowering phase, those 2 points get further apart. So a full range of motion for these muscles is when you're as close together as you can get. So for me, this is it. This is basically, I'm in a lot of spinal flexion. So you'll see my spine is rounded, spinal flexion, and those 2 points are very close together. Top of the pelvis, close to the bottom of my ribs. That's somewhere near a fully shortened rectus abdominis. And as those lengthen, you can hopefully clearly see my fingers close together, and those same points as they get further and further apart. So again, that's how much generally your rectus abdominis can lengthen from person to person. You'll see this is a fully lengthened-ish rectus abdominis, and you'll see my spine hopefully is an extended spine. So your spine goes from extension to flexion. And again, these are this is the main muscle that is going to do that thing, just because it has a very large moment arm internally to the spine, so it's probably the best mover for that. So that's what we're trying to do. Just realize that's, regardless of exercise, that's what my spine has. It can go through extension, it can go through a lot of flexion. This is a simple piece of equipment that allows you to go through that full range of motion. Because it is firm, there's, again, if we look at my things that say make a good exercise, alignment's really easy to get on this one because, again, we're only moving basically in one plane and we're just setting our position, and the load, if we're using at this point in time, only goes in one direction. The only way we could really mess up alignment on this maybe, and even arguably for that could have a secondary purpose, if I was using a cable that pulled like that direction or that direction, arguably might not align well. But if you're using your body weight or something on your chest, then basically you're aligned well. And then we're looking at profiles, actually a pretty darn good profile. Whereas again, as those points get a little bit horizontally closer together, as you come to the top, it actually gets a little bit lighter. So it's actually pretty good from a load standpoint. And then again, bracing, having that back pad and pelvis thing to kind of push into, you're not losing any energy transfer. So really all we're gonna do is getting on this. As far as setup goes, generally, and again, this is gonna be a little different from person to person, but if you have a little bit more range of motion, you can see I have pretty good range of motion in my spine. There's generally two sides, one that doesn't drop off as steep and one that drops off a little bit more steeply. If you have a little bit more range of motion in your spine, I say you put this side against your pelvis. Maybe if you have a little bit less, you put this side against your pelvis. So again, more range of motion, put that steep side in there. And this is how you do it. This is how you set up for the most part. You sit on the ground, so butt, glutes on the ground, slide that right up against, and that's generally the position that you want to be in. And then from there, just realize what you have going on. So as I go down, again, I don't want my hip flexors moving a whole lot, so my pelvis should stay in the same spot. I don't want my pelvis moving. I want my pelvis locked in stone on the front of this pad. And then again, it's just these 2 points on the eccentric as I'm going through now. These points are getting further apart, so this is basically a full stretch. And as I contract, I'm rounding my spine, however deliberate you want to do this. Round, 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 round. And go to those 2 points are basically as close together as they can get, right about there. And then nice, slow, eccentric on back. So controlled the whole way back. Same as anything else, strong contraction, hard squeeze, end up, and that's the end range. And realize if I went further here, this is my ribs, this point coming closer to my unmoving pelvis. If I do this at some point in time, you'll see that basically my pelvis actually moves in space. My pelvis, the back, I can actually feel the top of my pelvis back here, some bone that was pressed against here. If I sit all the way up, again, this is the point where pelvis isn't moving, so it's all spinal motion, which is all rectus abdominis. And then as soon as I let my pelvis move off that pad, that's gonna be hip flexors to a certain degree. So that's pretty much it for setup. Get that right against here. Very slow, controlled eccentrics. And you'll see I do this a lot as well too. So like I'll sometimes put my fingers on here, whatever helps. Like I want to feel those points getting further away, keeping them tight. Don't let things just relax at the bottom. Keep some tension there all the time. And if you have tension, it should basically be a straight line of your abs between these 2 points. You shouldn't be trying to hit a vacuum here. Some people try and like suck in into a vacuum or some weird thing. If you're doing it right, it should be pretty much a straight line between these 2 points. Again, unless you got a big mountain of fat on here, that's okay. We're working on that. We're going to go from a stretch position, and then as these contract, I'll normally do hands like this is one of my favorite. I'll feel all this contracting, pull closer together, hard squeeze, and then down control. From there, same as any other exercise. If you need bigger rectus abdominis, load it. So let's say you can only do 6, really good to start. And if you've never done these before, you've never done them slow, controlled, for some reason when people do abs, they do 12,000 reps at like a seizure rate for whatever reason. Some people like to do it that way. When you actually do it the same as you should any other exercise, arguably to try and grow muscle, controlled eccentrics, pauses at the end range, hard squeeze of the concentric. I've had plenty of people that can do basically 5 or 6 and their abs sometimes cramp so hard they can't move. So if you're trying to progress these, the first thing I would focus on is reps. If you can only do 5 properly, then focus on working up to basically be doing 10, 12, whatever per set. You can add volume, add sets with body weight first, and then from there progress it the same. Just basically put some load wherever you want it, where it's gonna stay in the same spot as you're progressing. So again, one thing to be aware of is if I put a dumbbell right here, and one week I'm going and I'm doing all my crunches with my dumbbell right here and whatever, and I get to the point where I'm doing 8 reps with a 10-pound dumbbell here, and I really wanna progress to 9, well, if over the course of the week you slowly get the dumbbell lower and lower, bringing this dumbbell closer to the axis that's moving, which is in this case, this part, lumbar portion of your spine, makes less torque there. It's the same as making it lighter. So again, you'll see some people as they go to crunch, or if they have their hands behind their head, and then stuff gets hard, they go, and they bring their hands forward over here. Any weight that you have coming closer to this, basically the point of rotation, the axis of rotation, technically a couple points, or goes this side of it, technically helps you. It gives you a spot basically more than anything else. So just be aware if you're progressing load, wherever you hold it, keep it the same spot the whole time, unless you're intentionally using that to progress a set. So typically, let's say I do a set of 10. What I would do, I do a set of 10 with a weight, I get fatigued, I drop it. And then I continue on basically, just going with my body weight. And if I get to the point where I can't do any for body weight and I get right here, I might intentionally bring my arms up here and allow you to finish. So again, literally, hopefully you can see that again. You could actually get to a point where I'm stuck, I can't come up. You put some weight over here. It's actually gonna be taking away the load that you're lifting and actually giving you some weight, assisting you, pulling you into spinal flexion. So again, it's not that it's a bad thing to do that. Just realize moving the weight position changes the torque at the trained joints, and again, could potentially be cheating if you're not aware of it. So get yourself a cheap mat, get yourself some good form, and then from there, progress it the same as any other exercise, and eventually your abs will be big enough. So again, someone's gonna ask me, how many sets, how many reps, all that. Well, watch some more videos on my site and you won't have that question. It's always the same as anything else, whatever you can recover from and progress from. So again, abs, part of it could be needing bigger abs. If you can't see your abs well enough, it's one of two things. First, it's always body fat, but second, it can be amount of tissue. So again, if you have a very low body fat and you still don't like the way your abs look too much, then train them the same as everything else. Progress them over time, they will get bigger. The bigger the abs, the deeper the separation in between, again, assuming that you've got relatively low body fat. So get it set up, set your hips in the right spot, realize what's supposed to be moving, what's supposed to be staying still. So in these, the kind of the opposite of leg raises, we are keeping the pelvis still and only moving the ribs, in turn flexing and extending the spine. Whereas leg raises, we're trying to keep the ribs still and move the pelvis. And then same as every other exercise, control the centrics, maybe pauses it at the end ranges, strong contraction and concentric peak contraction to the top. And again, train it, progress it, load it, just like anything else.